Ben Affleck walks off Colbert's show after host's relentless badgering turns promotional interview into heated confrontation. "I'm not going to sit here and be disrespected," Affleck declared before storming off set, leaving Colbert visibly shaken, as producers scrambled to cut to commercial. The tension was palpable from the moment Ben Affleck walked onto the Late Show set. What should have been a routine promotional appearance for his upcoming psychological thriller quickly descended into one of late-night television's most uncomfortable confrontations in recent memory. The interview started innocuously enough. Colbert, with his characteristic smirk, welcomed the Academy Award-winning director and actor with seemingly genuine enthusiasm. The studio audience cheered as Affleck, dressed in a navy suit, took his seat across from the host. But keen-eyed, viewers noticed Affleck's tight smile and rigid posture, telltale signs of someone bracing for an uncomfortable encounter. "So, Ben, great to have you back," Colbert began, shifting slightly in his chair. "I understand you've got a new film to promote, but I'm actually more interested in talking about something else tonight." Affleck's smile faltered momentarily. "Well, I'm here to talk about Shadow's Edge, but I guess we can... You see, my researchers dug up something fascinating," Colbert interrupted, his tone shifting. The audience grew quieter, sensing the sudden change in atmosphere. "In 2016, you made some comments about late-night hosts being, and I quote, part of the problem with America's divisive media landscape. Care to elaborate on that while sitting on my show?" The camera caught Affleck's expression hardening. "That's taken completely out of context, Stephen. I was talking specifically about how political discourse has become entertainment, not about..." "But isn't that convenient?" Colbert cut in again, his voice taking on an uncharacteristically sharp edge. "You come on shows like mine when you need to sell something, but behind closed doors, you criticize the very platform giving you publicity." The studio audience, typically quick to laugh at Colbert's barbs, remained awkwardly silent. Affleck shifted uncomfortably, clearly trying to maintain his composure. "Look, Stephen, I respect what you do, but that's not what I said, and not what I meant. I'm happy to clarify, but if you're just looking to create a gotcha moment..." "Oh, I'm not looking to gotcha, Ben," Colbert replied with exaggerated air quotes. "I'm just wondering why celebrities like yourself feel entitled to bite the hand that feeds, then show up expecting champagne and softball questions." The tension in the studio became unbearable. A producer could be seen off stage, making a cutting motion with her hand, but Colbert ignored the signal. "You know what? Let's move on," Affleck suggested, visibly trying to salvage the interview. "The film explores themes of public perception versus reality, which is actually relevant to..." "Speaking of public perception," Colbert interjected again, leaning forward with an intensity that made even the cameramen uncomfortable, "let's talk about your recent comments on celebrity journalism. You called it predatory, right? Yet here you are, using it when it suits your promotional schedule." At this point, several audience members exchanged concerned glances. This wasn't the Colbert they were accustomed to seeing. Gone was the witty, sardonic, but generally good-natured host, replaced by someone seemingly intent on antagonizing his guest. Affleck took a deep breath, his jaw visibly clenching. "Stephen, I came here in good faith to talk about a project that dozens of talented people worked incredibly hard on. If you're not interested in discussing that, just say so and we can end this now." "Oh, I'm sorry," Colbert responded with theatrical insincerity. "I didn't realize we were only allowed to discuss topics pre-approved by your publicity team. My mistake." The comment hung in the air like a grenade with its pin pulled. Affleck's expression shifted from frustration to genuine anger. The studio audience, typically energetic and engaged, sat in uncomfortable silence, witnessing what was clearly becoming a train wreck in real time. "You know what? I've respected you for years," Affleck said, his voice low and controlled despite his evident anger. "But this," he gestured between them, isn't a conversation or even an interview. It feels like an ambush." "An ambush?" Colbert repeated with an exaggerated expression of shock. "Because I'm asking questions that aren't on your publicist's index cards? Come on, Ben. For someone who's built a career playing tough guys, you seem awfully thin-skinned." That comment crossed an invisible line. Affleck's face flushed as he removed his microphone with deliberate calmness that belied the storm brewing beneath. "I've been in this industry long enough to know when someone's trying to create controversy for ratings," he said, standing up. "I'm not going to sit here and be disrespected for doing nothing more than showing up to promote a film I believe in." As Affleck stood, Colbert's expression finally changed, a flash of realization crossing his face as he sensed the situation slipping beyond his control. The cameras captured the host's momentary panic as he realized his guest was actually prepared to walk off mid-interview. "Now, Ben, let's not be dramatic," Colbert said, his tone suddenly conciliatory. But the damage was done. "Dramatic?" Affleck echoed, standing his ground. "That's rich coming from the man who just threw away a professional relationship for what? A viral moment? Some extra clicks?" He shook his head in disgust. "You know, the sad thing is, I actually used to think you were better than this." The first row of audience members could clearly hear what Affleck muttered next, words that would soon be analyzed endlessly across social media platforms and entertainment news outlets worldwide. "You've become everything you used to satirize," Affleck said, voice low but distinct. "Just another media bully fishing for outrage." Colbert's face twitched as the barb hit its mark. He glanced nervously at his producer, who was now frantically signaling to go to commercial. But Colbert, perhaps sensing his authority slipping away on his own show, doubled down instead. "Media bully?" Colbert repeated, his voice rising. "That's an interesting accusation from someone whose PR team requires approval on every question before an interview." The audience gasped. This was a severe allegation in the industry. Suggesting a celebrity demanded control over interview questions was essentially calling them a prima donna who couldn't handle authentic conversation. Affleck stopped in his tracks, turned back to face Colbert. His expression had transformed from anger to something colder, more calculating. "That's a lie, Stephen. And you know it." Affleck's voice was deadly quiet now. "I've never once demanded pre-approved questions in my entire career. Not once." The cameras caught a brief flash of uncertainty in Colbert's eyes. Had his team given him bad information? Or was this a deliberate attempt to provoke his guest? Either way, he was now too committed to back down. "Well, that's not what I heard," Colbert said with a dismissive wave, trying to regain control through nonchalance. "But hey, if you say so." "No," Affleck said, stepping back toward the host's desk. The studio audience was completely silent now, witnessing something rarely seen on carefully orchestrated late-night television. Genuine, unscripted conflict. "You don't get to throw out a damaging lie about my professional reputation and then just, if you say so, your way out of it." Colbert laughed nervously, looking toward the audience for support that didn't materialize. "Come on, Ben, it's just late-night banter. Lighten up a little." "Banter?" Affleck set his removed microphone down on Colbert's desk with deliberate precision. "Is that what you call it when you ambush a guest with out-of-context quotes, interrupt them repeatedly, and then make false claims about their professional conduct?" A camera operator later reported that they could see beads of sweat forming on Colbert's forehead as the host realized this situation was spiraling beyond his control. The show's director was shouting into staff headsets, but no one seemed sure how to intervene without making matters worse. "Look, Ben," Colbert said, his tone shifting to conciliatory, "maybe we got off on the wrong foot tonight. Why don't we take a breath and—" "Too late," Affleck cut in. "You know, I've done hundreds of these interviews over 20-plus years. I've been asked difficult questions, personal questions, sometimes inappropriate questions. That comes with the territory. But what doesn't come with the territory is having my integrity questioned by someone who used to stand for something. The audience, initially stunned into silence, now rippled with murmurs. Phones were surreptitiously raised throughout the studio as people realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. Colbert's producer had abandoned subtle signals and was now openly approaching the stage, clipboard clutched to her chest, like a shield. But before she could intervene, Colbert made one final attempt to salvage the situation. "Ben, let's not make this bigger than it needs to be," he said, straightening his suit jacket in a gesture that appeared more nervous than casual. "We can still have a productive conversation about your new film." "And there it is," Affleck replied, with a humorless laugh. "Now that you've created your viral moment, you want to pretend you're interested in the actual reason I came here." He shook his head. "You know what the difference is between you now and you 10 years ago, Stephen." Old Colbert punched up. "This version," he gestured at the host, "this version just punches." Several audience members audibly responded with oohs and even a few scattered claps. Colbert's expression hardened, his own anger finally breaking through his professional veneer. "That's rich coming from you," Colbert fired back, abandoning all pretense of control. "You come in here with your rehearsed answers and your polished image, playing the victim when someone dares to ask a real question." "A real question?" Affleck echoed incredulously. "You haven't asked me a single genuine question since I sat down. Just a series of gotcha setups and false premises." By this point, the show's producer had reached the stage but seemed unsure how to intervene. The red light on the main camera was still glowing. They were broadcasting live, with no delay, no safety net to catch this free fall into unprecedented television chaos. "You know what?" Affleck said suddenly, his voice surprisingly calm amidst the tension. "I respect your audience too much to continue this. They tuned in for entertainment, not whatever this is." He turned to address the studio audience directly. "I apologize that you had to witness this. This isn't what any of us signed up for tonight." The audience responded with uncertain applause, caught between supporting the guest who seemed wronged and loyalty to the host whose show they had chosen to attend. Colbert, sensing his audience potentially turning against him, made one desperate attempt to reclaim the narrative. "Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Affleck, everyone." Apparently unable to handle tough questions without walking off, the comment hung in the air like a lead balloon. Even Colbert's most loyal audience members seemed shocked by the petty jab. As Affleck turned and headed toward the exit, a staff member rushed forward with his suit jacket, but he waved them off, continuing his dignified exit without looking back. What happened next would become one of late-night television's most discussed moments in years. As Affleck reached the backstage area, visible to the audience through the partially open studio door, Colbert's longtime bandleader stood up from his position and pointedly removed his headset. Without a word, he set down his instrument and followed Affleck off stage. 3 band members immediately did the same, creating a surreal exodus that left Colbert visibly stunned. The studio fell into uncomfortable silence as the host sat alone at his desk, the empty guest chair a glaring reminder of how spectacularly the interview had derailed. The show's floor director was frantically signaling for commercial, but Colbert seemed momentarily frozen, unable to deliver his usual smooth transition. "We'll be right back," he finally managed, his voice lacking its characteristic confidence. As the cameras cut away, audience members would later report that Colbert immediately stormed off the set, ignoring his producer's attempts to speak with him. Backstage, chaos erupted. Staff members were divided, some rushing to check on Affleck, others huddled around monitors replaying the confrontation that had just unfolded live on national television. Network executives were already blowing up the producers' phones, demanding explanations for what they were witnessing on the live feed. In the green room, Affleck was gathering his belongings when a production assistant timidly approached with a phone. "Mr. Affleck, I'm so sorry. But the network president is asking to speak with you. What transpired in that conversation would only emerge days later, but the immediate aftermath was visible to everyone when the show returned from commercial break. Instead of Colbert, the band leader who had walked off in solidarity with Affleck was sitting at the host's desk. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady despite the unprecedented situation. "As you may have noticed, we're experiencing some unusual circumstances tonight. Stephen is taking a moment, and we're going to finish tonight's show a bit differently." The audience, sensing they were witnessing television history, sat in rapt attention as the bandleader continued. "I've been with this show for many years, and one thing I've always believed is that how we treat people matters. Tonight that principle led me to make a decision I never imagined making." He paused, visibly emotional. "I want to apologize to Mr. Affleck, and to all of you for what you experienced. That's not who we are, or at least, not who we should be." As he spoke, the control room made a split-second decision to cut to a camera positioned in the backstage area, where Colbert could be seen in heated discussion with network executives who had apparently arrived on set. Realizing they were on camera, one executive frantically signaled to cut away, but the damage was done. Viewers nationwide had glimpsed the behind-the-scenes fallout in real time. When the show finally ended, 20 minutes early and without Colbert returning, the incident was already exploding across social media. Ein Colbert meltdown and a stand with Affleck were trending within the hour, with clips of the confrontation being shared millions of times before the network could even begin damage control. By morning, the story had transcended entertainment news to become a cultural flashpoint. Network executives issued a tersely worded statement acknowledging the unfortunate incident and announcing that The Late Show would be going on a brief hiatus to reassess our creative direction. Affleck, displaying the media savvy of a Hollywood veteran, maintained dignified silence for 48 hours before releasing a simple statement through his representative. "Last night's unfortunate incident reflects larger issues in how we communicate with one another, even in entertainment. I have great respect for Stephen's work and contribution to American comedy. I hope we can all learn something from this moment about the difference between challenging conversation and personal attack." The statement was widely praised for its graciousness, further turning public opinion in Affleck's favor. Media analysts began dissecting years of Colbert interviews, identifying a pattern of increasingly antagonistic interactions with guests who didn't align with his political viewpoints. Former staff members emerged with stories about the host's behind-the-scenes behavior, painting a picture of someone who had gradually lost touch with the satirical humility that had once defined his public persona. 3 days after the incident, as the controversy showed no signs of abating, Colbert finally addressed the situation in a video posted to the show's social media accounts. Sitting in what appeared to be his home office, gone was the bombastic television personality, replaced by a subdued figure who looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I've spent my career trying to speak truth to power through comedy," he began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "But somewhere along the way, I failed to recognize when I became part of that power structure myself." He paused, visibly struggling. What happened with Ben Affleck was inexcusable. It reflected the worst of what our media landscape has become: confrontational for the sake of confrontation, provocative for the sake of provocation. The 10-minute video included a direct apology to Affleck, the audience, his staff, particularly those who had walked off in protest, and viewers at home. He announced he would be taking a month-long leave from the show to reflect on the kind of host, colleague, and person I want to be. The network subsequently announced that the show would continue with a series of guest hosts, beginning with the band leader whose principled stand had earned him widespread acclaim. 2 weeks later, in a move that surprised many, Affleck's publicist confirmed that the actor had spoken privately with Colbert in what was described as a productive conversation about accountability, media ethics, and moving forward. When Colbert eventually returned to his show, the change was palpable. Gone was the aggressive interviewer who had ambushed Affleck, replaced by a host who seemed genuinely committed to thoughtful conversation. His opening monologue addressed his absence directly. Sometimes you need to lose your way to remember why you started the journey in the first place. 3 months after the incident, ratings for The Late Show had stabilized after an initial steep decline. Media commentators noted a distinct shift in Colbert's interviewing style. More listening, less interrupting, and a willingness to engage with perspectives different from his own without immediate confrontation. The final chapter in the saga came 6 months later, when Affleck returned to the show to promote his next project. The anticipation was enormous, with the episode recording the highest viewership in the show's history. When Affleck walked out, the audience gave him a standing ovation that lasted nearly a minute. "Well," Colbert said once they were both seated, "I think we can agree this is already going better than last time." The tension broke as both men laughed, and what followed was one of the most genuine, thoughtful conversations ever broadcast. In late-night television, a fitting conclusion to an incident that had, against all odds, ultimately made both men and the medium they worked in better for the difficult experience they had shared.